recording here. Okay, welcome everybody in whatever time zone you happen to be in. Here in Minnesota, it's evening time. So this is the introductory or informational telecon, videocon pertaining to the Space Grant Midwest or in the Midwest National Rocketry Competition. And so what we'd like to do is talk through what we have in mind and hear your feedback, hear your questions. There's already been one question for clarification that was before I started this recording, and I've asked Kelly to write that down and send it to me by email so I can look into it. There may be a discrepancy in the handbook. If you would be willing to add your name, your affiliation next to your name, that would be fine. I'm not sure I'm going to have a chance to watch those too closely, but anyway, I think that might be useful. And what I'd like to do is, after quick introductions of everybody, in fact, then go through some slides fairly quickly so that we can spend as much time of this 1 hour time slot dealing with questions. Let me remind you, there is a website, and on the website is posted the handbook. I made some edits to it earlier today and reposted it, so it's up to version 2. And if we make changes, nothing major in this case, but if we make changes, that's where to find the most recent handbook. And then the slides that I will show in a moment are already posted on the website as well. So let's get started with introductions. And how about I call people as I see them on my screen. So I'm James Flotten. I work for the Minnesota Space Grant. I'm housed at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities campus and teach students to do rocketry and try to work with other people to run competitions of this sort. Gary, you want to say hello?
Hello, everyone. I'm Gary Stroik. I'm technical advisor for this competition and co-organizer with James. And I do mentor a number of collegiate teams for various competitions, and am on the board of Triple E Minnesota, where we'll be hosting the launch this year. So I look forward to working with all of you.
Yes, we're definitely looking forward to getting back out there. It's been a little while for us. That's kind of why we call this the return to flight competition, in part because we think some people haven't been flying, and we hope that this helps them get back at it. So again, just going across my screen, literally. Heidi, you want to say hi?
Hello. Yep, I'm the STEM coordinator for the Illinois Space Grant, and I'm also helping with the student groups at the through aerospace engineering now.
Jonathan?
I'm Jonathan Sevier, and I'm retired from the University of Illinois and have helped mentor some of the student teams over the last few years.
Very good. Derek Kozak.
Yep, I'm Derek. I'm a senior at UW-Platteville. I have a level 1 certification. So yeah, just looking to get more information about this.
Okay, Kelly.
Hi, I'm Kelly. First year student, return student, all new team. We're the plucky underdogs. I'm the team leader.
Very good. Welcome. Sydney.
My name is Sydney. I'm located at Hamlin University at the moment.
And you are a student?
Yes.
Very good. Sophia.
Hi, I'm a grad student in the aerospace department at University of Minnesota. I do participate on the rocket team, but I think this year I'm going to help Professor Flotten with some remote rocketry lessons this year. But I did want to come and kind of learn a little bit more about the competition.
Very good. Welcome. Who's on from Iowa AIAA?
Hello, this is Kyle Laston. I'm the chapter president of the of AIAA at U Iowa.
Very good. Peter Hartford.
Hi, I'm Peter. I'm on the University of Minnesota rocket team, and I will be our lead for this competition.
And Lauren?
Hi, I'm a senior at Northwestern, and I'm one of two leads for our rocket club within our larger aerospace club here.
Very good. Brian LaRose.
I'm Brian LaRose. I'm the prefect of Tripoli, Minnesota, the field that you will ostensibly be flying at. I've also been a judge for the competition for the last, I don't know, 3-4 years.
Super. Thanks again for being here, and I love your background. Ben Tiglin.
I'm Ben. I'm a freshman, freshman at Bethel University here, and just joining the rocket team and trying to get some more information.
And Ben Gold.
Hi, I'm the lab coordinator and instructor at Hamlin University in physics department. And I'm pretty new to model rocketry, but have some background in astronomy and astrophysics. So I'm looking forward to this.
If you put a big enough motor in, you might get there. Kevin Stanley. Kevin, are you there?
Sorry. I'm Kevin Stanley, also from Hamlin, and never done rockets, but very interested.
Welcome. Tonis.
Hi, I'm Thomas Veldhuis. I'm a physics professor at McAllister College, and I'm also the advisor of the McAllister High Power Rocketry team.
And are you teaching a seminar on rocketry this fall?
I'm teaching a course called Rocket Science, where we teach mechanics in the context of space flight and rocketry.
Very good. Art.
Hey, I'm Art Gibbons. I'm the current president of the National Association of Rocketry, section number 576 here in Minnesota, sometimes known as MASA. And I am the Bethel University mentor this year. And I've known Gary and Brian for quite a while. Gary Stroke and Brian LaRose.
Thanks so much for being here. Bud Rudder.
I'm Bud Rudder. I'm a senior at University of Wisconsin River Falls campus. I'm a chemistry major with a minor in physics and math. And our team leader is Colin, but he was unable to make the meeting, so I'm kind of filling in.
Super, thanks for doing that. Diane Jeffers.
Hi, Diane Jeffers, University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. I'm the associate director for the Illinois Space Grant. And for many years, I guess you'd say, I've been the non-technical advisor for our student teams. And I'm going to be looking at things, working with Heidi this fall, and then I will be gone. And I'll be Heidi's. Time for me to retire.
She gets to retire. Man alive, that's great.
Yeah.
Are you coming to Jackson Hole?
Yes.
Wonderful. I'm looking forward to that.
My fond farewell.
Calvin. Calvin Chance.
Hello, my name's Calvin, and I'm a senior at Hamlin University.
Okay. Super. Max Benson.
Hi there, yeah. My name is Max Benson. I'm a junior at UMD Duluth, and I'm a member of the Bulldog Rocketry team here.
Okay, James Sackett.
Hello, I'm James. I'm a PSCO student at Normandale, and I'm just looking to get into this. So I'm planning on majoring in aerospace engineering, so this is my first step towards that.
Very good. How about Will DeVerter?
Hi, I'm Will. I'm a senior in engineering mechanics and aerospace engineering at UW-Madison, and I'm the chapter president of our AIAA team.
Okay. Ahmad Yassin.
Yes, hello, I am Ahmed, and I am from a military technical college from Egypt, and I'm looking forward only to learn about this competition.
What time is it in Egypt right now?
It's 2 a.m. So yes, I'm skimming sleep just to be
No
here.
problem. No problem. 2 a.m. That's easy. No problem. Welcome. Welcome. Okay.
Thank you.
Let's see. We've got Gus Woolley? Gus, you there?
Yeah, sorry. I'm a sophomore at Hamlin University, and I'm just looking to join the rocketry team here.
Super. John Morella?
Hi, I'm a senior in mechanical engineering at the University of North Dakota. I'm the Rocketry Club's chief engineer this year, president last year.
Welcome. Katie Rebido?
Hello, I'm Katie Rabideau. I'm the advisor for University of Wisconsin-Platteville.
Noor Ayman? Are you there, Noor? Ahmad, is this one of your people?
Yes, but I don't know what is the problem. Maybe there's a technical problem in his microphone.
No problem. Okay, welcome, Noor. I hope you can hear us at least. Josh Sadarsky?
Hello, my name is Josh Sadarsky. I'm from Hamlin University as well. I'm a sophomore, and I'm really looking forward to learning about launching rockets and hopefully to build a repertoire for a NASA internship.
Anshuk?
Hey guys, my name is Anshuk. I'm the technical director at the Illinois Space Society, which is a rocket club here at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. We participated in this space grant in the past, so we're just looking at the competition again this year.
Welcome. Keith Stein? Are you there, Keith? I can introduce him. He's from Bethel University. He's a physics professor. Did I miss anybody?
Chad Ingman just joined.
Very good. Chad, could you introduce yourself, please? We're not hearing you. Did we miss anybody else?
I didn't go. My name's Nick. I'm a senior mechanical engineer at Northwestern. I'm one of the team leads on our rocket team this year.
Welcome. Okay, so let's literally go quickly through some slides. One moment. I just need to close some windows here. Share screen. Good. Okay, so very quickly, these slides are posted. This is the 2021-2022 Midwest High Power Rocketry Competition. And we're calling it the Return to Fleet Challenge. Basically, in this context, we allow different groups to build different numbers of rockets. So fleet means 5 rockets, flotilla means 3 rockets, armada means 8 rockets. Mostly I'll just mention fleet. There are a few modifications of what's expected besides the number of rockets if you build more or less. For instance, if you build more rockets, you might get more pages on some of your reports to talk about your extra rockets. Our intention is to get together in person in May of 2022 at the North Branch launch site of AAA Minnesota. So this is being hosted by the Minnesota Space Grant Consortium, represented by me, and by the AAA Minnesota High Power Rocketry Club, represented by Gary Stroit. And this is the first of 2 telecons. The second one is a repeat of this one, so you don't have to come back. This is for people who want to get started now. And the second one is for people who actually aren't forming until the spring and will have to work very fast. So we've done introductions already. That's how to reach me. Gary is the technical advisor. I'm basically the logistical organizer. My recommendation usually is write to both of us if you have a question, because even if it's logistical in nature, Gary often has opinions, and even if it's technical in nature, I sometimes have opinions. And we just did round robin introductions. Thanks again, everyone. Here's a little bit about the past. The last competition that we actually finished was 2018-19. There were 20 teams involved. And of those, 17 of them made it to the fly-off. And this says where they were from. 5 of them were from Minnesota. The rest of them were from elsewhere. And the other 3 teams out of the 20 did make progress, but ultimately had to withdraw. That does happen. We hope they learned a lot, and we hope that all of you make it to our fly-off. But try to make sure you get things done in a timely enough manner that you can survive some setbacks. You probably will have some, that's life. We did, one of the setbacks for us was that we started a competition in 2019-2020 with about 20 teams, but we had to cancel that because of COVID. You all have heard of that. And so we took the following year off, the 2020-2021 year. We did not even propose a competition. And this year we're hoping that we can have about 20 teams, maybe even more, that will attempt our return to fleet challenge. And so again, welcome all. Here are things you need to know about. There is a handbook. It's posted on our website. There is some supplied equipment and there are some fees. And the fees are used to help us supply equipment and to actually pay Gary Stroik a stipend for helping advise this competition and a few other things, like to rent places that we use. We'll be going through the schedule, some parameters for the competition, some things to do before the competition date, the way the competition is actually judged, and some comments about safety and judging. And there will be time for Q&A, but I'm going through these slides pretty quick. This is what the competition handbook looks like, and there is a link to the website. This is version 2. If you read the fine print, you see it says version 2 posted today. Basically, the most recent competition handbook will be posted on this website. And I don't expect to notify everybody that there have been changes, but typically the changes are very modest. So if you're ever looking for a question, you want to answer a question from the handbook, go to the website and make sure that you're using the right version of the handbook. The most recent changes were I put S on draft of design. So now it's draft of designs. Okay, that's not a big change at several locations in the text of the handbook. Some comments about the registration fee. It is, and it probably will be $400. That's due at the end of January. So that's kind of when you need to be serious, although some people will certainly be working in advance of that. Teams that were involved in this competition during the year that it was canceled get to use their $400 registration fee from before and apply it to this year. So you don't actually owe any more money at all. This registration fee will cover an altimeter 2 if you're interested in borrowing one. We want an altimeter 2 or perhaps an altimeter 3 on every flight so we can get some basic parameters like peak altitude, peak velocity, peak acceleration. But this is not an altimeter to fire ejection charges. This is just a data logger. So if you're trying to do deployment with ejection charges, and you probably will on some of your rockets, you'll definitely need commercial, genuine altimeters, not just data loggers. We will also apply $100 of your registration fee towards motors for your team. On the other hand, this year with multiple rockets flying, it's very likely, almost for sure, that you will go over $100 on your motor bill, in which case then you will owe Gary, who provides the motors as the vendor for Tripoli, Minnesota. You'll owe him extra money to buy the extra motors, and you need to tell him appropriately in advance which motors you need. So you can buy additional motors, you can pick them up at the competition. You could even try to fly your rockets more than once, although our expectation this year is that you will have multiple rockets and each of them will fly just once. But if you have the time, and if there is enough time within the launch window, you could say, oh, that didn't go quite right, and the rocket is still in good shape. We can get permission to, and we could fly that one over again, but you need to have the motors scheduled in advance. There's some fine print there, including that if we happen to get a huge benefactor, we might be able to reduce the registration fee. I don't expect that's likely. We'll probably try to raise at least some industry money, but this registration fee of $400 has been appropriate, in fact, for the past several years, and I expect it will stick. We need you to tell your state's space grant that you were involved. Basically, space grants do reporting to NASA, and so I need to know who's doing what in Minnesota that's related to space grant. And so getting sponsorship does not mean they're going to give you money necessarily, but it does mean that they know what you're up to. So anybody from Illinois, you need to be in touch, and you will be, with the Illinois Space Grant, and Wisconsin, et cetera, everybody. On the other hand, you could certainly tell them, hey, we're doing this competition. Could you give us some money? That would be a fine request. They might say yes, they might say no. But here are some registration fees. Travel fees will vary a lot depending on where you are. If your rockets were to cost $200 a piece, I'm not saying they will, but they might, then 3 rockets would be about $600, and 8 rockets could be as much as $1,600. So there's a pretty wide variety in how much people will spend on rockets this year. And then the motors. I'm guessing the motors will be, besides the $100 that is part of your registration fee, you're likely to spend another $150 to maybe $500 on motors just to get these things off the ground. And then, of course, there's the possibility of flying in advance. In fact, you're supposed to fly at least 1 rocket in advance on a high power motor, H class or above. And then if you have certification attempts, we'll get to that in a minute, then you're likely to need some motors for flying those before the competition as well. So here are some expected costs if you want to approach your space grant and say, look, it looks like we're going to need about $1,000 or something. Could you help us out? And again, maybe they will, maybe they won't. But they need to know that you exist so they can report on you. Here is the description of our competition. And I suspect that all of you have probably read this already. And if you have not, you should read it while I'm talking. But let me just point out 3 things to watch for in this competition. So the first thing is that you're supposed to make a set of rockets, either a fleet of 5, a flotilla of 3, or an armada of 8. And these rockets are supposed to illustrate the fact that you are really good to go on building all sorts of different kinds of rockets that operate differently and have different pieces to them and different techniques that are necessary for operating them properly, okay? So in some sense, we're going to talk about diversity. In this case, diversity means differences in the rockets, in the construction techniques, in the way that they operate. And to make sure that everybody, including the people who only build 3 rockets, has a fair shot at being able to get the points, basically, we're going to say that in this kind of category, like number of fins, if you have rockets that have 3 different numbers of fins, that's enough. You don't have to have 8 different numbers of fins on 8 different rockets. That could be done. That might be a bit excessive. Or 8 different diameters of rockets. That would be really hard because diameters of rockets only come in certain diameters for high power rocketry. So we're going to kind of assume that you got your diversity points in various areas if you do 3. And then if you have 3 rockets only, you should be able to pull it off. And if you have 8 rockets, there will definitely be some duplication. In fact, you're supposed to be flying H and I and J class motors. So there really are only 3 classes of motors that you're allowed to choose from. So therein is, if you do at least 1 of each, you will be considered to have illustrated your ability to fly in 3 classes. That would be considered full diversity of that type. So the diversity list, in other words, having a very organized, here are the things that we're going to try, and here's which rocket is going to illustrate which one. That's a very important part of your documentation. I would encourage you to start working on a diversity list essentially right away. You might imagine it would be hard to judge teams that have all different rockets flying in all different ways, and that's true. So we decided to have every team build 1 specific kit rocket. We're calling this the core rocket, and then you will have additional rockets on top of the core rocket. So the handbook tells you where to buy the core rocket, which rocket it is. It's a dual deploy kit rocket, so as opposed to a scratch build where you designed it yourself. And then you're supposed to fly it on a very specific motor. So everybody will essentially incur the expense to buy that core rocket and build it and buy that motor and fly it in dual deploy. So you're not supposed to tweak the core rocket big time, except if you could really do better. So for instance, most kits, including this one, come with eye bolts that are bent. And it really is better to have forged eye bolts. Most of us already know that. And so if you switch from bent eye bolts to forged eye bolts, that doesn't really change what the rocket looks like or how it behaves at all, but it just makes it a better rocket. So if you can improve on the core rocket, by all means, but don't necessarily go and choose a completely different nose cone or a completely different this or completely different that. It's supposed to be the same basic rocket with improvements to the instructions. One exception though is you might imagine putting fiberglass over the top of this rocket to make it stronger. You don't need to. You don't need to for the motor that we've indicated you will fly it on. If you want to show that you're good at fiberglassing, that's great. Do it on a different rocket, okay? The third thing to watch out for are the certification attempts. Part of what we're trying to do here is get people flying again, and in fact, get more students across the set of teams certified. And so we expect that every flotilla will garner somebody a level 1 certification. And every fleet will garner someone a level 1 certification and someone else a level 2 certification. And every armada will garner 2 different people level 2 certification. For certification attempt, you need to build the rocket by yourself. So there will be team built rockets and individual built rockets. And we will probably at the final competition fly the cert rockets first, and it will be up to Brian and other people on the club to be monitoring and observing and recording the certification attempts. In general, if you fail your certification, that doesn't mean that you're out team-wise. In fact, you might even succeed in your certification and decide you don't want to get certified because it costs some money, and maybe you don't want to pay the money and become a team member, certified member of high power rocketry, but I hope you do. And so this is an opportunity for every team to get some additional people besides the people who start out certified, additional people certified with the rockets that are built for this competition. Which reminds me, don't bring old rockets to the competition. These are rockets built for this competition by this team. You can look at old rockets if you have some around to get ideas of what you could try, but build new rockets for this competition, please. I should pause. And the reason is this is important. And if there are specific questions about what we're trying to accomplish, now might be a time. They're stunned.
Hey, James.
Go ahead.
I just dropped a note in the chat that in order to get your high power certification, you must be a member of the EEE National Organization. So you go to EEE.org and you can sign up there.
Or NAR.
Or NAR, yes.
Yep.
And
Okay,
then I would advise doing that at least a month ahead of the competition so you get your card and your number.
Thank you for that reminder. Gary, why don't you help make sure this happens? In other words, if we need to add some things to the handbook, fine. If we need to have separate documentation or reminders to the teams, fine. All right. So I saw a note that Kelly had put something in the chat, but I don't have the chat open. Gary, if you have the chat open, could you relay?
I do have it open. The only 2 notes I see in there right now are one from who's Chad Igman, who's basically it's Nathan Igman. He's from Bethel, and then Brian's note. Those are the only 2 that are currently in there. So if somebody else put one in, could you re-enter it because it's not showing up? At least it didn't go to everybody or to me. So.
Okay, so that said, maybe I was mistaken about a chat showing up.
I raised my hand.
Oh, you raised your hand. That's a whole different deal. Kelly, don't raise your hand. Just talk to us. What's going on?
I didn't want to interrupt. So when you said that we needed to talk to our local space grant, would that be you in my situation?
In Minnesota, that is me, and I already know about you. But yes,
Yeah,
indeed. Everybody needs to be in touch with their state's space grant.
I think we got that all tied up then, didn't we?
We did, and it turns out that there's a bunch of space grant people on this call because they kind of expect that there will be people in their states interested, and they are curious who those people might be. Okay, let's proceed. Here's just some statements of rules. This is not thorough enough, frankly, but it just shows what could happen in a flight where you have a boost phase. While you're coasting, there might be video perhaps on board. You reach an apogee, and then on your way down, you pull a parachute, maybe even more than one, and you land. Make sure you land at a reasonable, safe speed. So as I'm looking down the list of statements here, again, this is not exhaustive, but every team will need to have a mentor who is level 2 or higher certified. And they also need a faculty advisor. And the faculty advisor does not have to be certified, but if they are, they could serve as both mentor and advisor. The faculty advisor is the person we need to write to make sure that the team actually has what they need and is getting the money or getting whatever The mentor is the person that the team will correspond with or talk to about what they're actually up to and whether or not it's appropriate and safe. And so there's a list of the difference between a fleet, a flotilla, and an armada. You need to run your ideas by Gary as the competition technical advisor before you start to build. There should be an asterisk there. There is an asterisk on a later page that more or less says, if you're building a kit, we assume the kit is reasonably well designed. Maybe that's not a great assumption. Hopefully it is. And so you're welcome to build kits without getting Gary's go ahead, as long as you build them as they're supposed to be built. But if you design your own rocket, you definitely need to run that by. And so we've asked for a draft of designs. Run this by Gary, and he'll get back to you with any comments he has and any reservations he may have. And you should do that before you build your rockets, or at least before you build your non-kit rockets, your scratch designed rockets. And then all, I think that's a typo. The competition flights are on H or I or J class. It says I or J. That's not right. I will fix that. I'm going to write a note to myself, I or J, should say H or I or J. In fact, the kit, the core rocket is going to fly in an H motor. We do expect everybody will do at least one test flight of a team-built rocket before you come to the competition. And in the case of certification flights, it's frowned upon to try and get certified L1 and L2 on the same rocket on the same day. In fact, it might even be illegal depending on what club you're working with. So we're assuming it's not happening. That means if you're going for an L2 at our competition, you need to get an L1 before you come. And if you don't have an L1 before right now, you're going to have to do some before competition flights to get your L1, and then you can come to our competition and get your L2. So that would be additional pre-competition test flights. We expect all rockets will have a parachute deployed at the peak of the flight, an apogee parachute. So if there's more than one parachute, that would be your first parachute, your drogue, and if that is the only parachute, then it would be main. Make sure if you're pulling parachutes on the way down that you get all your parachutes out no farther from 500 feet above the ground. And I think in the case of the core rocket, there's a specific value and it's not even 500 feet. It's different, it's higher than that. Make sure that when you are doing electronic deploy that you use commercial altimeters. It's fun to build your own, but you shouldn't count on them. And so we want commercial altimeters on all flights, although you might say, hey, and we can build our own, and we'll show you that we can do that as long as there are commercial altimeters also on board, just in case. Make sure you leave motor ejects in place, or else have two independently powered, independently wired commercial altimeters, both of which are going to pull the parachute at apogee. We want to make sure we have two cracks at that apogee parachute. That's kind of the most important one. We'll lend you an altimeter 2 as a data logger if you would like. And we expect to have at least that kind of logging on every flight so we can tell, you can tell us how things performed, because much of your reporting will be, here's what it was supposed to do and here's what it actually did. And if they're not the same, here's how we explain that. Even on the head-to-head competition with the core rockets, it's not who goes the highest, but rather who does what they said they would do. That's the most important thing. Radio tracking is required by the EEE Minnesota Club for all flights above 3,000 feet. And our recommendation is that you just plan on doing radio tracking on all flights. And then there's some static margin details and rates. You have to make sure that your rocket doesn't come down too fast, lest you be disqualified. Even if you don't break something, if your rocket comes down really hard, we will say no go, and then that rocket does not count, although you might have the chance to refly it if it didn't get hurt. But you don't want to hurt your rocket nor hurt the people, so 24 feet per second or slower for landing of all flights.
James,
go ahead.
James, yeah, real quickly. Yeah, thank you. If you're having a problem or need some assistance finding a mentor, let me know, and I will help your school find a mentor for your club. Just an FYI. And then there's a question regarding the draft of design materials. The question was, are the drafted designs also required for certification flights if they're scratch built? And yes.
We want a drafted design for all rockets, including the kit rockets. The drafted design basically says, here's what it looks like and here's how it's supposed to perform, at least some basics. And we want you to be able to do that with all your rockets, especially your scratch rockets and definitely your cert rockets. There's a bit more on a later slide about drafted design, but thank you for the question. And yes, Gary and I, Gary especially helps people far away find mentors, and Gary and I, between the two of us, sometimes end up being mentors for some of the nearby teams. But off we go. So before the competition date, here's some statements about your drafted designs before you start to build, or certainly before you start to build things that aren't already well designed by somebody else. Get this into Gary. He'll get it back to you within a week. And the very latest you could possibly submit this is 11th of February. But if you want to get going on designing and building things this fall, you definitely should turn this in this fall. So that's not really a due date. That's a maximum end time date. And by all means, turn it in earlier than February 11th, if it's appropriate. So this document should include simulation files so that you can simulate what's going to happen, as well as dimensions and materials and things like that about all of your rockets, including the kit rockets, but especially the scratch built rockets. And then Gary will take a look at your stuff and maybe do some of his own calculations and get back to you, especially if he's worried about, that rocket is not good enough for that motor. Therein is a problem, and it's good to know that before you build it, or it's like, okay, we just need to build that even tougher if we're going to use that motor, or maybe we should choose a different motor. So that's one of the pre-competition requirements. We also expect every team to build and successfully fly a model rocket. This is easy. You can do this in a day if you put your mind to it. But basically, this is just to show some real basic minimum knowledge of rocketry. And so you should send in pictures of you with the rocket before and after you fly it. Don't wait till March. I would suggest you do that this fall, frankly. And if your entire team actually already has high power experience, you could actually get a waiver. Maybe you have to talk to Gary about this. Or if you would rather build a high power rocket instead of a model rocket, that would be possible, with the caveat you can't use that high power rocket as the competition rocket. This is a pre-competition requirement. Okay, so just build a basic rocket and get it flown. And in the case of a model rocket, you don't even have to go to a special place to fly it. I would encourage you to get right on that. We also expect every team to do some educational outreach. And so you will do it and it'll get signed by your space grant. So at the end of the handbook, there's a form where you say what you did. Pretty much this involves just talking to a group of people who are not on your team about what your team is up to. Probably, in fact, has to be before the competition. So it's not like what we did and how it went at the competition. This is what we're going to do at the competition. So this is due a couple of weeks before the competition takes place. And I would encourage you to get this out of the way earlier than that if you can. Here is how the competition is being judged. This is the same as it's been in past years. And so for those of you who've done this more than once, this will be familiar. There are 2 written reports before the actual fly-off. At the fly-off, there's an oral presentation. Then you get scored on how well your rockets actually do in the flight. And then after the competition, after the fly-off, you will have one more report about how it went. And these things are graded individually and then ultimately weighted. 30% for the first written report, 30% for the written and oral presentations, both of which are convincing us that you're flight ready. 20% for how you do in flight, and 20% for how you can describe what happened, and in particular, discuss what perhaps didn't go quite right and your understanding of that. So we'll also be collecting some information from your mentors as we go, but that doesn't need to be submitted by the teams. We just need to be in touch with your mentors. Pretty much on the same dates that we're collecting these reports, we'll ask your mentor, how's it going? How much have you talked to the team, and what have you talked about, and what issues do you have, if any? So here's the preliminary written report. Preliminary design report, which is a written report. This is the heaviest of the individual pieces. You have 25 pages to do a bunch of things, or 20 if you have fewer rockets, or 30 if you have more rockets. It's sort of an extra page per rocket approximately. Notice that this is due on the 11th of March. And that's the date by which you need to tell Gary exactly what you need as far as motors for the competition. And these are for the competition. If you need motors before the competition, and you probably do for test flights, you need to actually order those from Gary if you're going to order those from the appropriate person, as in the person who serves your area, in advance of your test flights, possibly 6 to 8 weeks in advance of your test flights. So March 11th is about the right amount of time in advance of the May fly-off date for ordering motors. There's more details about each of these reports in the handbook. This is just kind of a summary. The flight readiness report kind of comes in two pieces. One is the written report, and then later you do pretty much the same report in oral form in front of the judges when you are there in person. In this case, you finished building your rockets. The core rocket in particular, you'll talk about how that went and changes you made, if any, from the given instructions. You'll be listing and describing your diversity of techniques in all of these reports. And there should be some test flights behind you by the time you turn in this one. And so you should talk about how the test flights have gone. This one is due about 2 weeks before the fly-off. And then there's the oral presentation. This is what you do when you meet us in person. On the first day, which is a Saturday, we will meet in person. There will be some safety checks. There will be oral presentations by all the teams. And then there will be other announcements of various sorts. This will happen on Saturday, May 21st, starting in the afternoon and running into the evening, possibly fairly late into the evening. This will be oral presentations in front of a panel of judges, the same judges, in fact, who've been reading the reports, so they will not be unfamiliar with your work. And so you only have 10 minutes, regardless of how many rockets you built, only 10 minutes to talk to them. Make sure you make it count. Here's the competition. And so this year, the competition basically says you have a set of rockets, they need to all fly reasonably well. In other years, there have been very fancy formulas of how you grade the competition. This year, it's pretty much, did you fly your rockets? Were they all, did they land at an appropriate speed and reflyable condition? And if there are disqualifications based on what the observers have seen, then we'll tell you on the spot. And if your rocket is in shape to do it, you might be able to talk the RSO into letting you fly it again, but only if there's enough time in the launch window. And then we'll normalize. So people who have 8 rockets will have 8 scores, and then people who have 3 rockets will have 3 scores, and then eventually we'll get everybody to be 20% of the final competition grade. So there's no advantage or disadvantage, frankly, to having more rockets. Having more rockets is if you have more energy or have more people or have more money or all of the above. I would suggest you be careful about how many rockets you promise to deliver. But we want to give you the options of building fewer or more, and we look forward to what you got. The final report here will be 20%. This is mostly talking about how things went and discussing things that didn't go as planned or as expected. And so that will be due a couple weeks after the fly-off, which is slightly into June. And then the final grading of the competition, there are no prizes, just bragging rights, will be announced by about the middle of June. Ryan.
So as one of the people who has the pleasure of reading and grading these reports every year, I would like to point out that the handbook has very explicit instructions on the format and structure of these reports. I recommend that you get an English major, maybe a journalism major, to read this for you and build out the structure of the report, because if you look at Appendix A1, it goes right down the list of how we're going to grade your report. And if the things that we need to find aren't easily found or aren't there, you lose points for something we told you how to get points for. So it's a really easy way to score points. Go to Appendix A1, turn that into an outline, fill out the outline with all of the things we're looking for, and it's really easy. I would actually like to point out the Military Technical College of Egypt is having done exactly that during the last competition. Their report was a pleasure to read because it just went right down my list, and I could just check things off and verify everything, and it was great. So if you want to make our lives easier and get a higher score, go to the appendices, follow the guidelines. And it gets as bad as we tell you where exactly the page number needs to be and people don't put it in the right place. So just read the document and follow it and you'll score many more points.
I appreciate that, Brian. One thing I was going to mention for the competition flights, and that is these are on a specific day, and this day is in the summer for most schools, including my school. The people who are doing certification flights have to be there in person. This is one of the things you have to do on your team, is you have to get people to commit to coming on this day to fly that rocket that they built, because if they build a rocket and don't show up, your team will suffer. So make sure you don't have to have your whole team there, but the people who are doing certification flights have to be there. So just keep that in mind.
James,
Go ahead.
how many people would you recommend minimum and maximum to have at the event?
Well, I think it's handy to have at least a couple people watching each of the rockets. And so in this case, if you're building, in your case, Kelly, you said you might build 3 rockets. I think it would be really good if you had 6 people there, even if one of those rockets is really the baby of one of the people. I usually tell people that for this kind of a competition, even though we change the rules every year, 5 people is kind of the very minimum. I think the people will get overworked if you have fewer than that. On the other hand, there are some teams that have dozens of people and they all spread it out, and maybe it's hard to keep them all busy, but 5 to 15 is kind of the most common numbers, I think. Some comments about safety. Basically, you should be in touch with your mentor as you build things, as you design and build things. And so you should get safety checks essentially in advance. And then you will expect to get safety checks when you come by the Tripoli, Minnesota Club. And then those will be the day before you fly. And then on the day that you fly, you'll get another safety check by the person who's actually the range safety officer on that day. And they have the final word. And that may be Brian. And if it's not Brian, it's going to be someone that Brian appointed. So they will tell you what they don't like. And if they have ideas about how you could possibly fix it, they will tell you that too. But we're not going to contest anything they say. They run the field. They have the final word on safety. Don't give them anything to complain about. There will be safety checks by Tripoli, Minnesota, and then the judges will be watching the, let me see, what have I written here? Well, just long and short, we'll have a panel of judges. Some of them will be members of the Tripoli, Minnesota team because they're going to be there anyway. And this panel of judges will read the reports. They will listen to the oral presentations. There will be observers of the flights, especially the cert flights on this particular competition. And the judges will be assisted by or possibly supported by the space grants who are involved. So frankly, every state that is entering more than one rocket will be expected to provide a judge. And states like Minnesota that are maybe going to have as many as 4 or perhaps more than 4 rockets might be asked to provide more than one judge so that we can get a panel of judges. And if Illinois, for instance, has people to travel, super. And if Ohio were here and they don't have people to travel here from Ohio, they can talk to Gary about literally hiring somebody or finding somebody in the Tripoli, Minnesota Club to serve as their judge. Not that that person will give them any special dispensation, but we need to have judges related to who's sending rockets. Make sure you have your judges figured out by the end of January. That's a statement to the space grant people on the call. So here's the schedule. We're looking for a notice of intent to compete. Consider this non-binding, but this kind of keeps you on the email list. We'd like that by October 1st. It's on the website. I made a change to it yesterday, and so there's a new version on the website. The change is I want you to tell me of the people you list as team members, are any of them already certified? Because our intention is to push certification levels. So if someone already has an L1, then they can't be the L1 cert flight on your team. They already have an L1, but they could be an L2 cert flight, for instance. Before you start to build, work on your draft of designs. By the end of January, we need the judges to be identified and people who owe us registration fees, which will be some, but not all teams. But that needs to be in by the end of January. So frankly, that's when it gets serious because we don't give the money back pretty much. Although last year, 2 years ago, we decided to allow people to apply the money to a later competition. That was very unusual. I hope that never happens again. We will be asking you on February 11th, who exactly is going to come to the competition so we can make arrangements for the right number of people. And that's the last date to possibly get credit for a draft of designs. I'll put an S on that slide before I post this. And then February is really when you should be ordering test motors. And then March 11th is when your preliminary design review is due, as well as your competition motor order, as well as your model rocket demonstration documentation. Test flights really should be done in April, maybe into early May, maybe. May 9th is when your flight readiness written report is due and your educational outreach. The competition is the 21st and 22nd of May, 2022. If it turns out we can't fly on the 22nd, we'll try on the 23rd. And if it turns out we can't fly on either the 22nd or the 23rd, we'll let you know what to do. Our expectation is that about 2 weeks later, the final reports will be due. And another couple of weeks after that, the competition results will be announced. That's what I've got. Thank you for the questions that have come up as we've gone along. I'm happy to entertain additional questions at this time.
I have a question. So the fee, the $400 fee, is this a fee for individuals or for entire teams?
This is a team fee. So regardless of whether you're doing an armada or a flotilla, or whatever, $400 for the entire team. On the other hand, we give back $100 to the entire team. And so that probably will not buy all the motors that you need. But we will apply $100 of your registration fee towards your motor bill.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a question for you, but it's going to be more an after thing.
I'm happy to take questions after, either on this call or else by email or whatever. That's fine.
James, I have a question, just clarification about the model rockets. I didn't see that anywhere in the timeline, but you spoke about it earlier.
Okay, so it is in the timeline right here, model rocket flight documentation. Okay, can you see my cursor?
Hang on, I got your face there. Now I got it.
Okay, so basically, at the time that you turn in your first significant written report, you also have to turn in documentation that you did a model rocket flight. And here it is. Basically, it says, build a model rocket and fly it. This can be a very simple.
This is for all. I'm sorry, for all team members. All team members, or just one team needs to fly?
One team. Every team needs to have some people do this. It could involve everybody. It doesn't have to be. We recommend that anybody who does not have any experience in rocketry should be involved in this. In fact, frankly, we'd prefer that everybody in the team build their own little rocket, but it doesn't have to be. Build and fly at least one model rocket successfully as a team.
Perfect.
Get him a case of Alphazart.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Go get a bolt kit at Vikings or something.
And so in the case of model rockets, you don't need special permission. You should be reasonable, of course, but you don't need to go to North Branch, for instance, to do that. Your mentor will help you if you need help in identifying where to launch these rockets from. And of course, to launch a rocket requires some hardware. So you may need to buy some rockets, or at least one, and maybe even a rocket launcher, maybe. That's not expensive. And then once you have that, you can use that in subsequent years, assuming that you continue to do rocketry. Gary, comments from you, especially with your vast experience of rocketry and pretty vast experience with this competition, things that you wish people would remember from one year to the next, for instance.
Certainly, I think one of the things you really need to address, Brian already brought up, so I won't repeat it, but he's absolutely on target with your documentation. I think another item that teams stumble with, and that we have included in the requirements of the rules, is that the rockets aren't necessarily designed for ease of use, and or the teams don't practice prepping the rockets, so that oftentimes when we open the flight line at 9:15, we don't see people showing up till 11 or 12 o'clock with their first rocket ready to fly. And so it's taken a couple of hours, right, at least. And so really you need to think about when you're building the rocket, how difficult is it going to be to assemble, you put in the electronics, put in the, you prepare the charges, getting the parachutes in, getting the motors in, and so on. And how long is that going to take, and who's going to be responsible for it? Have I brought all the tools that I need in order to prep the rocket? So I'm not running around trying to find tools that someone may have or may not have, and so on. So really need to go through and prepare that. And that means building a checklist, right? And that's part of the requirements as well. But you really need to think about that and go through that and develop a thorough checklist for prepping the rocket and recovering, and particularly recovering if the charges didn't fire during the flight, something went wrong with respect to the altimeters. You want to be sure that you're safe when you're doing that. So you really need to go through all that, go through it with your mentor. If you have any questions, just contact me. I'm happy to assist any of the teams in these types of activities. So please do so. But those are some of the key things, I think.
Yeah, the checklist and the dry run will inform your checklist, and you go back and check the checklist with another dry run, you'll find the other things you keep forgetting. And when I wound up doing my level 3 stuff, my checklists, I had multiple pages of checklists for the different points during the day. So I had my early morning prep checklist, my actual flight prep checklist, my pad checklist, my safety disarming checklist. I had all these different checklists that I needed to have so that anybody could theoretically follow it. And actually had a guy that was his job was reading my checklist to me and making sure that I hit every point in it. And that's another great thing that a non-technical member of the team could do. They could be your checklist. I called my person Captain Checklist, but I mean, you could have this Captain Checklist there making sure that you are following the checklist and that the checklist requires these 4 different types of screwdrivers, and those are present in your toolbox.
Very
Dry
good.
run.
Yep. No, that's why we do practice launches, and frankly, make sure your practice launches are under some sort of reasonable time constraints also. Some years ago, before we had timing of this sort, like Gary said, it was midday before anybody flew. And the year that we imposed, you have to be ready within 1 hour. That's not this year, but you have to be ready within 1 hour of the field being open. Everybody had flown at least once by midday. And the year before, only 1 out of many teams had flown by midday. So it was night and day. And so we continue having timing. But this year it's different because you have a bunch of rockets. So this year it's your L1s have to be ready within 1 hour and your L2s within 1 hour of that and everything else within 1 hour of that. So by midday, all rockets have to be ready with the cert flights given some priority on the pads. Well, I see our 1 hour now has basically elapsed. Any final questions? If not, I will stop the recording and post this, but I'm happy to take any final questions that anybody wants to bring up.
Well, James, Gary, and Brian, I'm really happy that you're putting in the time and effort to organize this again. McAllister has participated in this competition twice before. The students really liked it. They learned a lot from it. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Thanks, Dennis. So remember, your next to-do list, besides recruiting team members, is to submit an intent to fly, an intent to participate form. Go to the website, get the intent to compete form. That does not obligate you. Once you put your money down, then you're basically obligated. But we'd like to get a sense for how many teams are going to be coming, and we want to know who to keep on our email list as we make announcements with regard to this competition.
Dr. Flatten?
Go ahead.
When it says team name, that makes sense to me, but it asks for team description in your intent to compete, and I'm not exactly sure what you're implying there.
That's mostly if you happen to be related to a class or maybe a specific club, like we are the AIAA team, as opposed to the senior design team, as opposed to the freshman seminar team. That might not make a lot of sense other than in your case, a brand new extracurricular rocket team. That would be a fine description of what you're up to.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thanks everybody. I am turning off the recording and keep in touch.
So